Well, I think we have just one more segment today, and that's we have a new contributor to the stream, and that's Brendon. Is that correct, everyone?
Yeah, Brendon. So, welcome, Brendon, by the way.
Pleasure. Nice to be here. Been a long
So,
time viewer.
yeah, I remember. So, basically, Brendon is one of the people that jumped in when we said that we announced that we take in people for Andrew's basement, and one of the early people who applied to join, I think. And you've been working how many months now with
Just about 3
Andrew?
months.
Yeah. But yeah, I remember when you first applied, you said, yeah, I have to wait a little bit before I can start. But yeah, you've been going for 3 months strong now.
Absolutely, yeah. I've been mapping the news stories as they come out from the national police and any of the regional military administrations, as well as civilian media within the area that often gives us a lot more context than the police will in their sort of like daily wrap-ups. But yeah, Andrew keeps me kind of in my own corner of the basement, in the news corner. I don't get to play with everybody else in the drone location, but no, it's been an excellent experience. But let me share my screen here. Want to share Andrew's map. Is this working?
1 sec. Yeah, I'm gonna full screen it.
All right, awesome. So, a little rundown of kind of like what I do for Andrew and the team, using the data that we collect off of Telegram. That's where most of it comes from. Sometimes Twitter, sometimes Facebook, every now and again, or the National Police website. They actually publish their articles there, and we import it in. Usually, we send it to a Telegram bot that goes to a spreadsheet. We take it from that spreadsheet into another spreadsheet, and reorganize it, categorize it by event type, when it occurred, who done it essentially as well, who committed what action, and based on like what kind of event it is. Andrew has a library of like, I don't even know how many hundreds of little icons. No joke, I actually see these icons in my sleep sometimes. But for example, we have August 11th here. And this is Antonivka and Kindika in Kherson Oblast. So on this particular day, there were a lot of drone strikes, and this is one of my areas of kind of interest and focus outside of the mapping. But what we'll do is we'll import that data into the spreadsheet. I'll then go into Google Earth Pro and create an event, import the translation in there. A lot of the times I have to kind of correct some things with the translation. One thing that I think a lot of Western software, translation software, doesn't necessarily get quite right is like the intricacies between Russian and Ukrainian language. And so sometimes AI translation software will default to Russian. So I have to go back and correct it to make sure it's the correct spelling, a lot of the time. And outside of that, we import a link or any images. I think, just kind of going full circle here to one of the stories we had. Yep, I think it's right here. August 14th, one of those demining machines that we saw earlier in Tochyni stream, when Joseph was presenting, is here at work in Kherson Oblast, after they cleared 21,000, almost 22,000 hectares of deoccupied territory. So this is another aspect of kind of what we track. It's not only the shelling and the drone attacks, it's also kind of like the civilian news. Today I was mapping in Donetsk Oblast. Hold up. Keep going. One place that I know everyone is really focused on right now is actually Pokrovsk, and kind of understanding that this area is under a lot of pressure right now. So today there were a lot of stories about grocery stores and mail services ceasing within the city within the next week. So Ukroposhta is going to be stopping their services, as well as Varus, a major grocery store in the Pokrovsk region, I think in Seladova and in Pokrovsk. So that's the kind of stuff that we track, that I end up mapping. So not a lot of geolocation, but more or less tracking of civilian infrastructure strikes and general shelling. It's been busy up in Sumy the last 2 weeks, but I think that's a pretty good idea of what I do there. But shall I move into the next segment, Erland?
Well, I think this is super interesting, and I guess we're gonna have you back whenever you feel like you want to present some of the news stories from the map as well.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
I think so the reason why I asked you to join is because you recently wrote an article which is quite interesting, and it's a little bit of a project that you have, right?
Yes. It was something I was really motivated to investigate and to hop onto. The war crimes aspect of this war is really what motivated me to join the Tochyni team and the basement, to sort of bring these to light and bring the perpetrators to justice. So this week, another development, obviously within the realm of Russian war crimes, was the beheading of a Ukrainian casualty in Belgorod Oblast. And I ended up doing a little bit of research and synthesizing a lot of the sources to kind of paint a broader picture of potentially what happened. I think it's likely what happened, but I won't say with 100% confidence that it's exactly what happened in terms of the story that I portray. But geolocated wise, we do know the war crime happened. Actually, I think Geo confirmed 8 hours ago. He just confirmed that, or that team confirmed it, as well as Deep State. They have also geolocated it and confirmed it. So we know this happened. That's confirmed. So I'll present my screen if that's okay, and go through a little PowerPoint presentation to kind of illustrate a little bit of what happened here.
Yep, please go ahead.
All right. Can everyone see this?
Yep.
All right. So Kolotilovka is a small town on the Russian-Ukrainian border in Belgorod Oblast, not far from where hostilities are happening to the north in Sumy and in Kursk. So we see somewhere around like August 16th, kind of in between the 15th and 16th, video surfacing on Russian Telegram of a beheaded Ukrainian casualty with his head displayed on a pike at the border crossing. So another development we'll get to later is there also might be more victims, according to some other open source investigations. So first, here is a censored image. My article, I do want to just be very clear. It's uncensored, so do not go into it with the expectation of censorship. I want to show the crime in all of its reality, because I think that's important. But also, I do want to make sure that people are forewarned and don't needlessly traumatize themselves if they don't have to. So this is the head of the victim put on a pike, and we'll get to where this is exactly in a second. But this was a video that originally it was from Rus Troika 1945 on Telegram, but I ripped it from Rosish And that's an important element, I think, is the source there. Rosich and that group, that name, that word in Russian, it's far right, Nazi aligned, white supremacist through and through. So that's an element that I think really underpins sort of like the nature of the crime that we're getting here, is that it's potentially racially motivated against Ukrainians, because we know that that's an aspect of this conflict as well. I have a edited video here of what I think was potentially August 12th, maybe earlier, but according to RV Voyenkour, he said between the 12th and the 14th, Ukrainian units were carrying out small raids on the border checkpoints in Belgorod Oblast, and that they'd kind of been doing that on and off to kind of test, I think, what kind of force was there, strength, and such. So I'll play this video here, if it will, of a Kozak 2 IMV. Let's see if it'll keep playing. Moving towards the border checkpoint. We'll get to exactly where that is in a second with some satellite imagery. But you can see they are under fire, but there are no explosions in this edited video. But because of the nature of the dragon's teeth on the approach that you can see there, that kind of sent, I think, the driver into a sort of confusion potentially, and he ended up getting into a pretty severe crash there at the border checkpoint, which hampered, I think, the intention of the operation. That caused them to then have to dismount. After they dismount, they begin to take mortar fire. I believe it's mortar fire. I'm not positive about that. You'd have to ask Andrew, but here's some satellite imagery to show us kind of the road that we were approaching here. It's actually right here, and this is the westerly direction. So up is west here. And in this case, they're coming down the road. We can see that clump of trees from the footage off the side there, and they skip ahead and end up crashing at the border checkpoint somewhere around here. I'm not exactly sure where they crash, but I think it's right at the border potentially. And so this is a close-up of where we saw that initial scene of the Kozak 2 running down the road here. I don't know if Lovely Lad is familiar with what units would be in the area in terms of Ukrainian units. I wasn't investigating that specifically, so I don't know what unit carried this out or what unit sustained the casualty. But we can see here from this is actually Chechen, I think Akhmat Special Forces, maybe 78th Special Purpose Regiment. I wasn't able to verify, so I didn't bother. We do know that they're Chechen, though, and I'll get to that later. But this surveillance drone footage here is showing the Ukrainians dismounting and retreating. You can see them going back up the road and over the border crossing in this satellite footage here. And that's, again, roughly the area in which this incident occurred, up in the top corner here. So the vehicle was lost, and casualties were sustained. I don't know exactly how many, but at least one is what I know of. Potentially, there could be 3 more, and we'll get to that in a second. So I have some edited footage and a still here from Kadyrov 95. I ended up getting this also from Rosich and RV Voyenkour as well, off of Telegram. And this kind of paints a picture for us more or less here of who was potentially engaged in the initial combat, maybe in the war crime, but at least engaged in the initial combat as far as we know. So we'll get to the photo on the side in just a second, but I want to play this this clip here. This is a close-up of a Chechen warrior. He says Akhmat Sili, which means Akhmat is strong, identifies himself as a Chechen. You can see the flag not only on his helmet, but also on his armor, his protective armor, on his vest, on his chest there. So in terms of who this is, we know who these guys are. There's also in the video, I've removed the sound because of potential curses and racial slurs and things like that, because most of these videos are tinged with that anyways. We can see these are Akhmat forces pushing back and counterattacking those Ukrainians that I think were raiding the border crossing. And here they are with the captured Kozak too afterwards. So shortly after, it cuts to this surveillance footage that I grabbed a still from. I edited a lot of this footage to exclude a lot of the stills of casualties, or the casualty in question. So this is the casualty in question, the victim of the crime. He's being, it seems, being searched at this moment by an Akhmat soldier. In terms of documentation, we'll get to how we might understand that he's being searched for documentation a little bit later, but that's just standard procedure as well. But that's what we see. And one important factor is that he does, in the uncensored image, you can see that he does still have his head, and his head is not, his decapitation is not a result of combat injury. And we'll get to that in just a second here. So this is the censored photo that's made rounds. You can see the 155th Naval Infantry Brigade. The Naval Infantry have that standard white field with a blue cross on it to identify themselves, and they were open about being 155th. So we have you can speculate that these guys were also potentially perpetrators of the crime, or at least participants in the combat. I wasn't able to verify presence of any specific unit. Just we know that he claims he's 155th, and it appears to be 155th. So that's what the basis I'm operating off of, that potentially Chechen and 155th forces were working together within the border, or maybe Chechen forces were relieved sometime after. The timeline of events is a little vague to me specifically. I haven't really found out when all of these events occurred. Again, the raid, I think, on August 12th. This video was published on the 16th. I was thinking this occurred between the 14th and the 16th, potentially thinking Akhmat forces were being pulled further north by the Kursk offensive, 155th relieved. I wasn't sure what the deployment was, so I didn't want to speculate more than that. So we have here the still, the infamous still that's making rounds across social media, specifically Telegram right now, and X. So in this video, he identifies himself as 155th. Now, an important thing about this video is it goes on to also show the corpse of the soldier lying on the ground. And I know it's really hard to tell with the blurred image, but this is a still on the left here of the corpse of the soldier with his head and neck intact from the Chechen video, and you can see the green roofs in the background of the video there. That's how we know it occurred at the border checkpoint. You can see that in the satellite imagery in my article as well, and from the satellite imagery earlier. But just ahead of where the corpse is, you can see this sort of blurred line that I have kind of going here. There's a stream of blood coming from where the soldier's head used to be, and you can also see his helmet has been removed as well. And I'm no expert in terms of forensics. I want to be clear about that, but it does appear in terms of like the uncensored images of the head on the pike that there was like some sort of knife or something used in the removal of the person's head. This is so difficult to talk about. I'm sorry. But in terms of who did this, we have some leads in terms of what I was able to find on X, and PS style 101. He's great in terms of publishing some pretty top notch intel sometimes. And this is a interception of transmission between the 155th. Now, this is where I'm kind of unsure of what unit's doing what here, because also at the same time, this perpetrator was said to be part of Akhmat. I don't know if there's a unit of Akhmat that's subordinate to the 155th. I don't know really how this works, but this is an intercepted intelligence intercept, where call sign Pushkar is talking to call sign Bugai, and call sign Bugai is essentially giving Pushkar permission to publish the video of the severed head at the checkpoint. Now, one other really important aspect of this video, and for reasons I wasn't able to integrate it with Substack, so you have to go to X to actually watch the video. X and Substack don't get along. You can actually see or hear rather that there's potentially 3 other beheadings that happened as well. So as to imagery for that, though, I don't have haven't seen any of that. But one other element of this is PS01. He ended up also diving a little bit deeper with another OSINT guy on X, and coming up with an investigation of social media, Russian social media here, kind of giving us a lead on potentially who committed this crime. It seems to line up for the most part. We can see he's associated with a 155th Brigade, Morskaya Pekhoty, so Marine Infantry Brigade, Naval Infantry Brigade. So we can see that he's associated with that. He's also got associations with Chechen Spetsnaz units as well for some reason. And we can basically verify that Pushkar is Denis Pushkaryov, is the best that we've been able to gather from open sources. Now, there might have been developments as I wrote this on the 17th. So some of this information could be old and there could be other developments. But as it stands, I'm pretty sure this is one of the perpetrators of the war crime. And we do see the command also implicated through this intercepted radio call. We do see the command structure implicated in the war crime as well, but that's something we all know from Bucha and Irpin, that is standard operating procedure for Russian units that carry out war crimes. It's usually somewhere around the company or battalion level, and I've even heard stories of brigade level recently in terms of like no prisoners and mass decapitation. And to put this into context also, there was a story, I think in June, from the Kyiv Independent about another decapitation of a Ukrainian POW and the dismemberment of a Ukrainian POW. So we have lots of these situations happening here. This isn't just kind of a one-off situation. This is just one that I kind of investigated here, and it's part of a larger pattern of Russian behavior in combat. And my sources.
Yeah, I mean, this is some absolute horrible shit, to be mild.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
And that's why it's very important that people like you actually investigate it and document it with sources that are valid as it's happening, and not just in the aftermath, because it's important to show these things to the world as it happens, as well as preserving the documentation.
Absolutely. I also wanted to highlight Ukrainian government response as well. Ombudsman Dmytro Lubinets also had said, submitted an appeal to the UN in terms of the committing of a war crime here, violation of international humanitarian law by the Russian side. So in terms of the government response, though, there hasn't really been much more than that. It's very much kind of let's investigate, see what's going on here, and then prosecute with the full authority of the law. afterwards.
Yeah. Are there any questions for Brendon, also from the panel, or comments?
It was very comprehensive. I guess maybe my one question would be, is there anything you think that the mainstream reporting, or, just to generalize, like the kind of online discourse about this got wrong or missed, or any details that you think are important that, in dialogue with the kind of broader discussion of the event?
In terms of the mainstream media, I haven't. So I admittedly don't read too much of the mainstream media. I spend most of my time locked in the basement, spending my time in Ukraine one day ago, mapping that. So I haven't really read up on what Western media has said about it. But outlets like Euromaidan Press, for example, or Kyiv Independent have mentioned the crime, but didn't necessarily synthesize all these sources together, which they might have put it into a broader context of other Russian war crimes happening in this nature. Whereas I kind of focus specifically on this one to really sort of nail down the details as to who did it, how it happened, as to why, that's an unanswerable question, but.
Yeah, thanks. Any other questions from the panel? Okay, yeah, it's a very comprehensive presentation, Brendon. Yeah, thanks for coming and sharing with us.
Yeah, no, thank you guys for the opportunity. I really appreciate it, especially as a longtime viewer and a longtime supporter of Ukraine.